Today we have the privilege of talking with a young artist with an old soul. Let's just say that he has a storehouse of knowledge and a passion for a subject that many peers his age have never considered or know very little about. That would be traditional country music. Jacob Woody, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jack. I'm glad to be here. How you doing?
Super.
Good.
Yeah, my comment, by the way, of a young artist with an old soul was meant by no means to be derogatory in the sense of the word, but rather as a compliment to you because
thanks.
Not many people your age are really concerned with or have ventured into the history of our American music like you have. So I find it rather refreshing and I'm impressed to find a person of your generation keeping the roots of our music alive.
Well, thank you.
So, first of all, where are you from and where do you currently reside?
Well, right now, as when we're recording this, I'm from Lake Park, Minnesota, and I now live in Fergus Falls due to college. But real quick, before I actually get started here, Mr. Jack, I would like to say thank you for being such an amazing influence in so many people's lives, including mine, and performing with whoever you can and figuring out, oh, this person is good with music. Let's go and play with this person and keep the passion alive for music in their lives. Really.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's basically it's who I am, what I do. So thank you.
Go.
Appreciate that. Let me ask this question. Let's just hit it right off the bat.
Let's go.
What is it that got you interested in traditional country music roots? And of course, who are some of your biggest influences that have led you into the direction that's inspired your songwriting?
Oh, yeah. Well, it starts off at a very young age. My grandma actually started this whole deal of liking this old music because she is from North Carolina. So she grew right next to Nashville, and she was listening to the Grand Ole Opry like everyone else at that time. She was born in 1929, right in that peak area of old country music. And we used to walk to the post office in Lake Park all the time, and every time we hear a train go through town, we'd sing a train song, an old train song, like Wabash Cannonball or the first couple lines of Folsom Prison Blues by Johnny Cash, and a whole bunch more tunes. And that's always a big memory of mine, that Grandma started me loving the music. Like she gave me my first CDs, all this other stuff, and she has just been an amazing influence, and she's started it all. Really.
Well, thank you, Grandma.
Oh, yes. And she just turned 90 years old not too long, just this year, actually.
Wow.
And she's the best.
Oh, that's super. So when did you start actually playing guitar?
Oh, well, I started playing guitar
singing,
when I was 14 years old. Singing's a different story.
Okay, all right.
I started singing about 10 years old at my church that I was going to. We had this service every Wednesday night called Jam Session with the Punch. Okay. Where they'd play music, and then during their intermission, the preacher would give up and give a little bit of a gospel speech, a sermon, but not too much because I'm through Lutheran, and we want it to be quick. We don't want to hear a 30-minute sermon on a Wednesday night. Let's just go. We time him. We put a timer up on the church. Yeah, we said like 5-10 minutes. We're done. We want to hear music. And I started singing with Louis Ronkin, and my first song ever performed in public was "Old Time Rock and Roll" by Bob Seger. I don't know why, so it's nothing country at all, but it was just an amazing tune because my mama and I love that song. But I started playing guitar because of Louis Ronkin. He taught me it. After one of these programs on Wednesday nights. I went up to him like, hey, do you want to teach me guitar? He goes, all right, you name it, let's go. What do you want to do? Let's do it. And after the whole thing was done, he comes up to me and he goes, so do you have a guitar? I'm like, no, I don't, but I want to learn. And he goes, okay, I think I got one you can borrow for a bit. And so I borrowed this little Fender Stratocaster, and even before I got it, I was looking up YouTube videos like, oh, here's the fingering of a G chord, here's a D chord. I knew the structure. I didn't know where they'd go. I mean, that's what he would show me, of course. But I was figuring, okay, here's how you do this, and here's how Johnny Cash does his strumming, boom, chicka boom, chicka boom, and all this other stuff. And then I don't mean to gloat, Mr. Jack, I really don't, but I feel like I was one of the fastest learners on guitar.
Oh, that's good.
Because I started in like August of 2014, and by November I was already picking lead stuff.
Ah, that's good.
You know, so it's
Well,
like
it's in
fast.
you. It's in you. The music's in
Yeah.
you. You have a gift.
Thanks.
Seriously,
Yeah.
I mean, people that comes that's quickly too. I believe they have a gift.
Yeah.
With it. It's just part of them. Let's put
True.
it that way. Let's put it that
and
way.
plus, because I didn't mention this, and I was going to, but I forgot it. But if you don't mind, back to with when talking about my grandma, I was the only grandchild she could not sing to sleep.
Oh my!
The rest of them, you know, she'd sing to them and on her lap, and they'd fall asleep. I'd be jumping up and down like, "Oh, I love this tune," you know. Wow. And I'd grab her pots from her cabinet and start banging on them, and had this little toy saxophone, and so yeah, music's always been part of my life, and it's kind of interesting how fast I pick up the guitar, but.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Louis Ronkin, he's pretty renowned in our area, in this particular area.
I think so.
For different styles of music, like he actually likes roots music too, as far as back to the 50s and so forth. Correct?
Yes, he does an amazing impersonation of Buddy Holly.
Okay, wow.
He gets all dressed up, and you know and that's really how I learned to perform as well, is through him, because he's the first guy I ever saw in concert.
Okay.
And he did this Buddy Holly tribute show at the high school, which was the first concert in the new high school at Lake Park. And he did this old Do You Remember Buddy Holly show, where he'd sing a couple songs and tell the story of Buddy Holly, and not just do songs and move on. He'd tell the story, or how'd this come about, all this other stuff, and present it to the audience, which was an amazing deal.
Yeah.
So
you gleaned a lot from that and learned how to, as far as performance goes and stage presence and how to present your music. All right, so when did you start writing songs?
it was around that time where I was learning guitar, so about 2015 actually.
So guitar playing just led right into writing.
Pretty
basically.
much,
Okay,
yeah.
that's cool.
And my first song I ever wrote was Honey Babe.
Oh,
That was the
that's
first song I ever wrote.
All right, so now you've recorded 2 albums. First, let's talk about some of your songs.
Let's do it. All right.
The title cut from your first album is That Wonderful Sound.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that referring to?
Well, That Wonderful Sound is a reference to a tribute to all of the old country artists. A bunch of those old, even rockabilly even. It pretty much, it goes through all of them, like I mentioned Roy Acuff in it, Johnny Cash, the Carter Family, even into rockabilly like Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, and so much more. It's really just kind of tribute's kind of a cliche word. I can't think of another word, but that's kind of what it is. It's kind of a homage, if you will, I guess, to all of the ones who've passed and who has given us all this amazing music.
Oh, that's super. That's super. Now, we've already talked about how you and Grandma were walking to the post office and you'd hear trains. Because my next song that I'm thinking about, because I see you take an interest in trains and the railroad, because both of your current albums feature railroads or old locomotives in the album jackets and so forth.
True.
So you have a song titled Train Where To Now.
Uh-huh.
So tell us about that song and actually your interest. I guess I was going to ask about your interest in trains and railroads, but you've kind of explained that. But
well, yeah, actually, that was the first job I ever wanted. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was young. Like, I wanted to be a train driver, you know, because it kind of, I think now I'm thinking about it, it meant freedom. You know, like I'm from Oregon. I was born in Oregon, and every time you hear a train, it's like, oh, they're going out somewhere. It'd be so cool just to hit the rails and move, riding the rails.
That is so. Oh my goodness, I have read so many biographies on traditional blues guys and stuff. Actually, during the Great Migration in the early '40s and so forth, from the South, Mississippi and stuff, when they were heading to Chicago. That so many had that dream because they'd see that train, and that freedom was one of the words they've described. and you just described, that's interesting. And we're up in the north here, and you have the same dream with the railroads. That's interesting. Yeah, train. Where to now? What's that about?
Well, that was my first train song I ever wrote. And I'm like, I really want a train song, because every time I sit down to, when I'm thinking about a new song, I want to write about something totally different every time, in a different key and different deal. So this one, I'm like, I want a train song. What can I do? So I was working at Kmart here in Detroit Lakes, and I was working outside all day because I was kind of the gardener day. That I don't know, there was a bunch of flowers on sale, and I was getting them all out of the store. And every time, I hear a train go by every 5 minutes, I'm like, train where to now. Like that whole freedom deal too.
Yep.
Because like, where are you going?
Where's it going?
Hope it's going somewhere and you get there all right. And so that's kind of where it started. And I thought about that, and on my way home, I'm like, ooh, I like that kind of tra da 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 da. So, and then I got home and sat down, and it just kind of flew onto a page, and it was it.
That's how songs come to life.
It's true.
They're
And
inspired by them.
songwriting's really weird. It's extremely weird. You get inspiration at sometimes the wrong time. Like at midnight, you're like, oh, I gotta write that down, but you'll forget in the morning.
Well, if you don't write it down, you'll forget it.
Exactly.
Your second album, I'm Moving Up. You do covers as well as originals. And on your first album, you did songs by, I believe, Buck Owens, Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, and others. Is that correct? What is it about those particular songs that you covered that you wanted to include in your albums?
Kind of, most of it's because of how Johnny Cash did it. He would mix his originals with covers. Of course, there were old covers that didn't really have copyright at the point, but he would kind of mix them all together. I'm like, that'd be kind of cool, because I didn't have enough cover or originals to put onto an album to make a full album, and I really wanted to do it. So I'm like, well, I got to fill in the rest of it with covers. And so I'm like, oh, this is a cool song. That would kind of fit.
Well, another subject that seems dear to your heart that you always include in your live shows and also on your albums was such songs as God Will Help You Through and Life's a Railway to Heaven. So, and those are gospel tunes. So tell us your thoughts on mentioning the gospel or making that a part of your show. Is it just something personal to you, or is this something you thought you should add on, or what is this?
Yes. No.
Good.
I'm not going to be that interviewee. No, but really, yeah, kind of all of the above.
Okay.
Because gospel's always been a part of my life, because of grandma too, because she'd sing all those old songs. But really, if you look at the foundations of country music, gospel is so ingrained into the thing.
Oh, yes.
Country music's an amalgamation of all kinds of genres.
Yes.
So, and country really started it off with becoming with the gospel, merging them together, and it plays a vital part in both parts of the music, in gospel or country.
Yes.
They're both so intermingled because of the Carter family too. They started that whole deal because you had the more Christian-based gospel tunes with the Carter family, and then your honky-tonk hillbilly stuff with Jimmy Rogers, the father of country music.
Oh yes.
Who both made their first albums in Bristol, Tennessee.
So we talked about Train Where To Now. You were inspired by a number of trains going by during your work shift. Well, and then the opening cut of your album, I'm Moving Up, is a song titled Woody's Got a Cadillac. So that sounds like a personal story to me. So
does it? Really?
Yeah, and actually, I'm Moving Up. That's I'd like to know more about that song, I'm Moving Up, and also Woody. Let's start with Woody's Got a Cadillac.
Okay.
Tell us about your inspiration behind that song.
Well, my first car I ever had was a 90 DeVille Cadillac. It's been my favorite car. I still have it. It's got to get fixed, but
Hank Williams type thing there.
Kinda, in a way, really. And yeah, so it was my first car, and I pulled up to school one day, and people were like, "Hey, Woody's got a Cadillac," and so it's like, yeah, that's kind of a cool ring to it.
Okay, I'm Moving Up. Basically the title of the album. What are you moving up to?
Well, that song is actually a cover. It's performed. I don't know who it's written by, but I know it's performed by Johnny Cash. Shocker, isn't it? But I'm doing a Johnny Cash cover. And it's from my favorite movie of all time called The Pride of Jesse Holland, where Johnny Cash plays the main role, where his daughter has like some spine disease. It's not spina bifida or some spine disease. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. But she has that, so she has to have surgery, and scoliosis, I think that's what it was. Okay. And so she had his surgery, but the only place they could do it was up in Ohio, and he would live in Kentucky in this movie. So he had to sell his farmhouse and move up to Ohio, and that's the opening song of that movie, and it's showing him moving out of Kentucky into Ohio to fix his daughters live. And whenever I'm feeling down, I like to put that on and just watch it because it's a nice,
Great,
good story, you know. And that's the opening song of that movie.
Wow.
So that, and they're like,
Okay. That kind of makes sense. And also, I was going to ask, what are some of your personal favorites? Well, apparently that's one.
Yeah.
What about the ones you've written? What are some of your personal favorites on the two albums? Is there ones that stand out that you'd really like to perform more than other ones, or something that's more dear to your heart on your originals?
Okay. Well, Monday Blues always is a good one. I don't like picking favorites, actually. I think that's what I'm coming around to.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like they're all they're all kind of a part of me. They're all
Yeah,
like my,
exactly. Yeah.
every song I wrote is me.
Okay,
Even though if it's written about someone else.
Sure.
Like I have a lot of new tunes where they're written about someone else, but they're still me in the song.
It's a part of you and part of your life.
Yeah.
So forth. Yeah. Okay.
So it's hard to pick a favorite. It's like
Okay.
picking a favorite child.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or favorite
Or
guitar.
Exactly. I was going to just say that.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
Yeah. I always tell my wife that they're like children, and they're all different, and they have different aspects of them and different, personalities. She doesn't buy that very well, but
Different
anyway.
attitudes. And
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the future of tradition. I'm going to switch gears here. What are your thoughts on as far as the current importance of traditional country and roots music in its place in society today? And, I guess my question is, are we slowly losing our history and traditions? And is there a hope of keeping the sound of American roots music alive?
Well, I hope that it will stay alive. I really do. Once America and whoever else, once you start forgetting about your past, that's not a good road. And what you're seeing now is I don't mean to say bad words about anything, but Nashville is trying to compete with Hollywood. That's what you're seeing. Where they're trying to pump out all these like poppier country tunes. It's like, no.
And that's in their history. That's in Nashville's history.
It
They've
is.
done that
They're always
before,
trying to
yes.
compete and
Yeah.
be like trying to change it up and but it's like, okay, listen, it was based on something different than what you're doing. It's meant to be like in the Appalachian Mountains with your banjo. It's not supposed to be out in $40,000 concerts with someone who writes about country life but has a private jet. So it's very important to at least remember your history or acknowledge it.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're going to keep repeating it, and that's never good for anybody. Well, in some cases it isn't, but but no, it's extremely important that it needs to try and get a comeback. And now we're kind of coming around to almost 100 years since country music's inception.
Wow.
That's what, the late 20s,
Yes.
which is only about 10 years from now.
Even early 20s, it basically started like in 1922
Exactly.
or so with fiddle players and so forth. What's interesting is that there's something to be said for evolution of things.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm with you on that we can't lose our traditions, and so I'm just curious because I don't know too many people. It's almost like the blues genre.
Oh, yeah.
It's a limited demographic that listens to that, and it's the same with traditional country or bluegrass or any traditional type music because.
Yeah.
In our society, we're moving forward all the time. And again, okay, I don't mind that. It's good to move forward, but like you said, we don't want to leave those roots behind.
Yeah.
And I tend to think that's happening sometimes.
And it is disappointing in that, but it's also, you want to move on from the past, and everyone wants to, but you can't forget it.
That's good.
And what you're seeing is like no one's really acknowledging like, oh, this is where we came from, except now that the Ken Burns documentary's out.
Yes.
It's an amazing documentary.
Yes.
But now you're seeing more of people like, oh, here's how it all started. Here's all these old people. Whereas before, excuse me, you had other people going like, what is this? What is this garbage? This isn't country. This isn't blues.
Right,
It's like, yes, it is. This is way before you guys ever came out and did all your things about doing stereotypical blues and country.
Yeah, that's good. So another thing that you may mention of me highlighting some of my students and artists that young people that I've worked with, but actually another passion that you seem to have and an interest is in area musicians and getting them to the stage and perform their music. You came up with your own concert series a few years ago called Taste of Talent, where you've actually invited artists in the area to come and share their music. So what's all involved with the setting up and producing a show of that? That's a pretty big show, actually.
It is, and it's a lot of work. My first time I ever did it, I went to Community Ed in Lake Park. I'm like, hey, I want to put on this concert where I invite all these local musicians just to play and have fun and raise money. At this point, I wanted to do it for the Alzheimer's Foundation because I was hearing about how Glenn Campbell was, having Alzheimer's and everything. And a lot of people I knew was affected by this disease. So I'm like, oh, what if we did that? And they're like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, okay, how about even this? We get donations and we give it to the drama and music department of the school.
Okay.
They're like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. So let's do it. And this all happened in 3 months. I got all fixed together in 3 months, which is remarkable. And kind of the whole idea of getting it was just an excuse to play with Louis Ronkin on stage, because get that back again.
Sure.
But no, it's a really good event that. Yeah, it's kind of my baby, and I've tried. I'm like, okay, this is my last year. I shouldn't come back because I got to focus on my schoolwork and everything. But it's like, I can't let it go. It's amazing to see the community love their performers and music, and it kind of all started with my first radio job was with Niji Radio, and they gave me the show which was New Artist on Air. Or I'd have to find local artists and interview them, kind of like how you're doing with this, but
Sure.
And it's really cool that I got to do that because that gave me the love of like, oh, yeah, put the CDs away for a bit. There's some community people here who are sometimes a lot better than who's actually famous right now.
Right.
So it's like, I invite a whole bunch of local artists. Yeah. And really, it's structured like the Johnny Cash show.
Oh, wow.
I'm such a fanatic,
Surprise.
Mr. Jack. I'm such a fanatic. Where the Johnny Cash comes on in the beginning, does his tune, and then he introduces some artists, maybe do a duet with them, and then he at the end does this gospel tune, and it's done.
Yeah. I've had the privilege myself not only to hear you and see you perform, but also to back you up as a musician. And I can say that you have a gift of fronting a show. Really, you got a pleasing personality. It makes the concert goers feel warm and welcome as if they were old friends. And I mean, you share stories with them and knowledge of traditional country music. And you've just explained that some of that you got from Johnny Cash's shows. But I was going to ask, does that come naturally, or have you had to work at that personally, that personal approach? Or
I would say that it kind of is natural. I don't mean to gloat again, but my first time in a musical or a play was in 6th grade, and immediately it was like, oh, this feels right. This feels like I'm meant to do this. So and then I started, actually performing in public and all that other stuff. So I'm like, this is cool. And then I started to, and it did take a lot of work though to go like, okay, let's not do that anymore. Let's try and focus more on doing it like this. Be more personable instead of apologizing for every little thing. So it did take work, but kind of the on-stage presence has kind of always been a part of me.
Well, it definitely, you definitely found your place. Let's put it that way. Whether it's radio broadcasting, or your radio show, or your live performances,
or even teaching music too.
Oh, there you go. See, it's all going to come in handy. So it's nice that that people can find who they are and then be able to work that and work in that. I know.
True.
Actually, what you're studying for right now is to be a music instructor or music teacher, correct?
You're right, yes.
So you'll see that'll have, you'll be a good teacher, I can tell.
Oh, well, thank you.
We're talking with Jacob Woody, a Minnesota musician whose love is traditional country music and just music in general, but that is his passion. He's got 2 albums out. Jacob Woody's first album was That Wonderful Sound, and his second album, I'm Moving Up. So Jacob, I appreciate you talking with us today. We're going to enjoy your music. Hope the very best for you, God's best to you on wherever you go with all this stuff. But just thanks again for taking time to talk with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Mr. Jack. I really appreciate it, and thanks for being such an influence on many people's lives, really. And just thanks for allowing me to do this, because I've been wanting to do an interview for a while, so I know I'm like, oh, sure, let's do it. I'm ready to go. But thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Hey, now Woody's got a Cadillac. Jacob's got a Cadillac. It's just the way he rolls, and nobody knows how Woody got the Cadillac. Don't knock it till you try it. Oh, don't knock it till you try it. It's a pretty nice car, bigger than a boxcar. Don't knock it till you try it. Well, Woody's got a Cadillac. Yeah, Jacob's got a Cadillac. It's just the way he rolls, and nobody knows how Woody got the Cadillac. It gets pretty good mileage. It gets pretty good mileage. Runs wherever he goes, no time for the pros. Gets pretty good mileage. Though it may have its flaws. Yes, it may have its flaws, but it's still better than your casual General Motors. But it may have its flaws. Hey, Woody's got a Cadillac. Hey, Jacob's got a Cadillac. It's just the way he rolls, and nobody knows how Woody got the Cadillac. Get it, Mr. Jack. Well, Woody's got a Cadillac. Yeah, Jacob's got a Cadillac. It's just the way he rolls, and nobody knows how Woody got the Cadillac.